Hello and welcome to Follow the Money. I'm Raine Musñgi. Join us as we explore the tools and insights you need to jumpstart your financial journey. The Philippine tobacco industry is navigating a complex landscape marked by proposed tax increases, escalating smuggling activities, and evolving consumer behaviors. Now, as the government deliberates on stricter regulations and higher excise taxes to reduce smoking rates, industry stakeholders express concerns about potential unintended consequences, such as the growth of illicit trade and economic impacts on legitimate businesses. Today, we are joined by Jericho Nograles, president of the Philippine Tobacco Institute, to delve into these pressing issues and explore the future of the industry. Coco, thank you so much for joining us and welcome to Follow the Money.
Thanks for having me, Raine, and I'm happy to be here.
We appreciate you making time for us. Perhaps let's begin with the current state of the Philippine tobacco industry. Can you kindly share with us your assessment of the industry in terms of perhaps the growth of market value, production, and employment?
Well, when it comes to employment, the tobacco industry is actually a huge economy for the Philippines. If you look at excise taxes alone, last year, the tobacco excise taxes contributed around 130 billion pesos to the government, and that has been steadily declining from a high of 176 billion pesos in 2021. And this steady decline is very alarming to the industry because despite the decline of legal sales of tobacco, there is an overall increase of consumption of tobacco in the country, which leads us to believe that the illegal consumption or the illegal tobacco is the one that's rising. And this unregulated and illegal tobacco is really harming not just our government in its tax collections, it's harming legitimate businesses, it's harming the 50,000 and so farmers, and millions of sales and distribution facilities and manufacturing facilities throughout the nation. So this is something that the PTI, headed by myself, wants to ask the government and continues to ask the government to correct.
Of course, when we're talking about tobacco products, that includes vaping, but it doesn't include nicotine patches or nicotine gums. Is that correct?
The tobacco products actually include the nicotine pouches, which is more popular than the patches. So you got pouches, you also have the HTPs or the heated tobacco products and the conventional cigarettes. As far as the PTI is concerned, we do not have any membership of the vapes. And in the vapes, that's a different story. That's a totally different story. Some of the vapes are nicotine delivery systems, but most of them are different and not part of the PTI.
Understood. Despite rising demand for cigarettes in Southeast Asia, the Philippines is unique because the Philippine raw tobacco exports have also been steadily declining. What factors what factors do you think are contributing to this downturn? It's different from what you were mentioning earlier, tobacco consumption, tobacco sales, correct?
Yes, we've got the raw from tobacco producing countries like India, like China, and they're really stepping up. And for us, we also see our farmers getting a little more hit because of weather disturbances, especially what happened last October, that hit our tobacco farmers. But this season, we're looking at a very good crop season, and that's going to increase our exports. And
all right, Coco, I think we're losing your audio every so often. We're trying to figure out where it's coming from. Can we try that again? Sorry.
So sorry about that. So,
no worries.
Well, basically, our competition is really India and China. That's for our raw tobacco exports. But I think the bigger issue is the domestic consumption, because our illicit trade is already, we estimate it to be already hitting 21% by year end. And even in Mindanao alone, as of 2024, 51% of the tobacco use or the conventional cigarette use in Mindanao is already illicit. So minority na yung legal consumption in Mindanao as compared to the legal consumption. So the government is really losing a lot of taxes there.
And we're hearing from the Bureau of Customs, we were just talking with them last week, they were saying that these illegal tobacco products are coming from countries such as the Golden Triangle. Is that correct?
Yes. So these illegal tobacco enters through what they call jungkongs. So these jungkongs enter from Malaysia, from Indonesia, and since we have a huge chain of islands with 33 million kilometers of coastline, we got so little law enforcement agents, and the law enforcement agents couldn't keep up. To be fair with the BIR and the BOC, they have been raiding more than once a day. And with their raids more than once a day, they still are not able to control fully the rise of illicit trade. And that's the reason why we are asking the government to consider optimum taxation or tax rationalization, as well as increased enforcement.
Is it a pricing problem? Is it true that these illicit cigarettes are attractive because prices are low and the mix, the flavors are actually more interesting? It's apparently sweeter than the blend that we have here.
Well, the numbers don't lie. The average price of legal tobacco is 170 pesos per pack, and the average price of illegal tobacco is about 70 pesos per pack. So that's a difference of 100 pesos per pack. And in some instances, you can even buy illegal tobacco at 40 pesos per pack. And with that kind of price difference, the smokers would tend to go to the illicit tobacco or the unregulated tobacco. And that's the reason why there's even a spike in underage smoking, which is very, very alarming for even the industry, because we don't promote that.
So now we've come to the crux of the discussion. The Senate, of course, is considering another round of excise tax hikes, though the reports say you're more for what you call a rationalization and not a moratorium on these sin taxes. Proponents arguing that it will curb smoking rates. However, PTI, your agency, had warned it could drive more consumers towards smuggled cigarettes. What would be a meet halfway solution?
Well, taxing tobacco is very complex. The world has experienced a lot in different jurisdictions that if you overtax tobacco, you actually allow illicit trade to flourish because of the price difference and the price disparity. So banning never works. There is a point where you can actually overtax tobacco, and we believe that we have reached a point where tobacco is overtaxed. We've run some numbers, considering the rise of illicit trade, considering the taxes, and taxes right now are 63 pesos and above per pack. And that means that majority of the cigarettes that are purchased is actually priced because of taxes. So it's high prices because of taxes. And because of that, people tend to buy the illicits, and government loses. The health advocates also lose because they always say that you tax tobacco to death to bring down the smoking incidence. But the thing is, if the taxes are too high, you actually give an opportunity for illicit traders to sell tobacco, and that's where it gets complicated. So in the industry, what we want is we acknowledge the dangers of tobacco. We acknowledge that it is a legitimate business. We acknowledge that the government can make money off it. And we acknowledge that tobacco taxation is primarily a health measure. And being a health measure, we want the government we want to help the government, and we're happy to pay taxes. The problem we have is that if it's overtaxed, ayun, you have uncollected and illegal and illicit activity that would basically drive a lot of people into more smoking. And so the health advocates should consider that. And there are many studies that actually back that up, even from the health advocates.
All right. Well, we were talking about pricing, and if the tobacco industry had its way, what kind of taxation or tax rate would be optimal for you?
That's a little difficult to answer because even economists are trying to crunch the numbers. But what is for sure is that keeping the current tax rate of increasing 5% excise taxes per year would definitely drive illicit trade up. It would drive smoking incidents up because of illicit trade. It would drive tax collections down, and it would drive legal sales down. So something has to be done. There was a proposal for a moratorium, meaning freeze in the rise of excise taxes, and we did some calculations there that can help all the parties. And then now there's a middle line. The current bill that's being forwarded to the Senate and approved in the House, where there is a plus 2% on excise taxes every even year, and plus 4% on every odd year. That seems to be a middle line that is acceptable to the government and acceptable to the industry, but it's yet to be seen. I'm looking at the health advocates saying that it's absolutely unacceptable. It has to remain the same. But the numbers are showing that it's going to be counterproductive to their own causes because it's actually going to um, incentivize the illicit trade and give way to more smokers.
We hear from some sectors that the number of smokers actually hasn't diminished, it's actually increased over time. And if it's not going to tobacco, it's going to vaping, which isn't, as you pointed out earlier, is separate from the tobacco industry. Plus, to your point about health, the organization has advocated for a tax rationalization, arguing that the constant hikes threaten the industry's stability. A moratorium on hiking sin taxes, though, is going to cost government 27 billion pesos in funding for universal health care. That's why, of course, health advocates are against it. But on the side, isn't that just delaying the inevitable? Since more countries are tightening tobacco laws, we have Portugal, Canada, France, Mexico, Australia, UK, and Belgium all moving towards this same taxation on sin products.
All the countries that you mentioned actually have a huge spike in unregulated tobacco already. Like, for example, Canada actually has a 50% incidence in Quebec and Ontario when it comes to illicit trade, and that's despite all their advanced and complicated law enforcement. So, using these examples actually highlight the fact that overtaxation in tobacco can lead to higher illicit trade, and with higher illicit trade, you've got bigger leaks in the government. Now, I'm very happy that you mentioned the shift, no, from conventional tobacco to let's say vape. Vape still remains to be less than 10% of consumption in the market. So it's still conventional cigarettes that are in the high 80s in consumption. And all the studies, government studies led by the DOST, FNRI, show that the increase of there is an increase of vape users, the increase of conventional cigarettes is still the highest increase. So it's still a preference for majority of the nation to and the consumers to go for conventional cigarettes. And the most alarming increase, would you believe, according to government data, would be from the underage and the senior citizens. And if you look at the legal tobacco companies, in their own internal data, they actually report a decrease of consumption of their sales across all these, across the seniors and across the adults, and of course, no one sells to the underage. So all the underage that comes from illicit trade, and all the increases in the past few years, that's all because of illegal trade also.
We were speaking with the BIR last week, and they noted two things, and this might actually work in the favor of the tobacco industry. One, that the country is losing about 40 billion pesos in the smuggling of tobacco products. There should be an answer to that, of course, plus another 27 billion if we postpone the tax hikes. Now, the BIR also said, Commissioner Musñgi suggested raising the vape excise tax to match that of tobacco taxes as consumption shifts to vape. Will that make any kind of dent? How would you react to the BIR's position?
Well, the 10% or less than 10% market share of vape will not really make a dent when you raise the taxes if you look at it in the big picture, since it's conventional cigarettes that are really majority, super majority of excise tax collections. I do have to take note that if the estimates are 27 billion pesos loss if there is a moratorium, I can guarantee you that the losses to government would be much bigger if the government maintains the plus 5% per annum. That's because of the incentive for the tobacco, the illicit tobacco traders to ramp up and scale up their sales. So if the government does nothing, if Congress does nothing on reviewing and passing new tax policies and tax rates and reducing these tax rates, please expect that the losses in tobacco taxes to be much bigger, and that's going to impact our health system because tobacco taxes pay for our health system.
All right, we have more questions for PTI President Jericho Nograles, but we need to pause for a quick break. Up next, we'll discuss why the decline in Philippine tobacco exports could spell trouble for our local farmers. Stay on BNC and follow the money. Welcome back to Follow the Money. We're still with Philippine Tobacco Institute spokesperson Jericho Nograles. Mr. President Coco, we still have about 6 minutes and 5 questions left. I hope you don't mind if I speed through some of the questions, but there are recent reports that indicate that smuggled tobacco products are funding criminal syndicates and even terrorist groups in Mindanao. Do you see this as an unintended consequence of high taxation?
Actually, you have to. I'll speak as the author of the Anti-Terror Act. Okay, so tobacco and terrorism has long been established. In fact, that happens throughout the world, and basically, the tobacco is like always an entrance to illicit trade of other things. That's why the tobacco trade routes, the illicit tobacco trade routes, that's where explosives come in, human smuggling comes in, and others. So it's very, very well established. So it's not directly linked to taxation per se, but terrorism really finds a friend in illicit tobacco. But yes, illicit tobacco does flourish under highly taxed regimes.
The Philippines recently approved a new tobacco tracking system to curb illicit trade. Do you believe this measure would be sufficient to counteract the rise of fake cigarettes and smuggling?
The answer is really yes and no. Yes, because it allows for easier tracking and tracing throughout the value chain from the start to the end. The problem is always enforcement. So let me try to make it sound as practical as possible. in the Philippines, we do not have a specialized group or a law enforcement agency that is focused on catching the illicit trade. Unlike some jurisdictions like the United States, you have the ATF or the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Unit that are really focused on those three things and all the illicit trade there. Here in the Philippines, you've got different law enforcement units that are being requested by the BIR or the BOC to enforce against illicit trade, and they have to choose a lot of things and prioritize a lot of things, and that's why there's no real focus unit. So if we change enforcement, I believe we have to create a specialized team throughout the nation with national jurisdiction to really go after, to do a sustained effort against the illicit traders.
Health advocates argue, Coco, that tobacco companies are shifting to flavored vapes to attract younger consumers despite regulations. What is your perspective on calls to ban flavored e-cigarettes?
None of the members of PTI actually have flavored vapes. So as far as the members of PTI are concerned, they're doing no such shift. But I do have to say that banning in general does make illicit trade thrive as well. Think of Al Capone and the prohibition during those times in the 1920s. So anything that will be banned actually paves the way for illicit trade. So that's a general warning, really. So it's better to have a balanced approach so that it's going to be a win-win.
Finally, you already mentioned some of the farmers earlier, how they were hit, but crop season should be good this year. What is your message to the over 50,000 Filipino farmers who depend on the tobacco industry for their livelihood amid these regulatory changes?
Well, to our tobacco farmers, your work remains vital to the Philippine economy and to the communities that you support. So we in the industry recognize the challenges posed by taxation, regulations, and declining exports. Kakampi nyo kami, and PTI is here to help everyone. Thank you.
Finally, for our special segment, we would like to ask our guest a personal, off-the-cuff, and real-life follow-the-money question. All right, Coco, you've been a congressman. Let's rewind to the start of your money journey. Everyone remembers their first big win. So our question for you is, what did you do with your very first big paycheck? What did you do? Did you spend it, save it, or regret it?
Okay, wow. My first big paycheck was when I was way before I was a congressman. So I was newly married, and then I was able to flip a pre-selling condo before it was turned over. So I bought it during phase 1, and then I flipped it before the turnover. So the value really went up. So I had this huge paycheck, and what I did is I decided to diversify it. I put it in UITFs, I put it in MFs, I put it in savings and loans, TDs, and basically I was so afraid to spend it, so I immediately invested it. But there was a regret. The regret was this was 2012 and Bitcoin was 50 US cents. And I was offered 50 US cents to the Bitcoin, and I said, "Oh no, that's not serious." So I didn't take the opportunity, and probably the story would be different had I took the risk.
And you'd be a billionaire by now. Would you like to share with us how much that first big paycheck was?
I think that was 23 million.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, it's good. It's still a great. Sounds like a great diversified portfolio, and you were able to use it, and I'm sure you were still able to enjoy it together with a wife. And if you like this episode and want to join the conversation or answer our questions, share them with us on social media, X, Facebook, and YouTube, #FollowTheMoneyBNC. We shall post some of those answers on our next episode. Jericho Nograles, president of the Philippine Tobacco Institute, thank you so much for joining us on Follow the Money. Grateful you could share your insight and position on the matter of tobacco excise taxes and vapes. We hope to speak with you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Raine.
Now, as the government considers higher taxes and stricter regulations, the tobacco industry faces an uncertain future. While health concerns drive policy changes, issues like illicit trade and the livelihoods of farmers remain critical considerations. The challenge lies in finding a balance between public health objectives, revenue generation, and economic stability. And before we go, we leave you with this thought from European Commission President Christine Lagarde. Public health should come before profit, but policies must also consider economic realities. And that is it for today's edition of Follow the Money. I'm Raine Musñgi. Thank you so much for watching. Keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel, always on top.